What's up?
Hello.
Good morning, troublemaker.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I think John stepped away for just a minute.
Okay, at least I know this thing's working.
I know that feeling. See, you can see him coming back in.
Yeah. Okay.
Morning, Jill. How you doing?
We've all become experts at the proper protocols of Zoom, that everyone came on, everyone's as muted. Wow, it's just amazing.
Very quiet group this morning.
Well, good morning to you all too.
Morning.
Good morning.
We all become so compliant, so
We become skilled at video conferencing.
Norm, it looks like you got everything you were looking for the.
I did.
This
And
week.
yeah,
Good.
thank you. You know, that just didn't. I think how quickly I responded. Then you think about how long those relationships have been developing. You know, many years of people working together, and if someone needs something, it happens quickly. So thank you
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, thank you, John, and his guys for jumping in, and yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And this is Commissioner Stan, just making sure you can hear me. Okay, good.
Loud and clear.
All right, awesome. Standing by.
5 by 5.
5 by 5. Hey, I recognize that.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. That sounded like Bill. Or no, it was Sharon. It was Sharon.
Oh my goodness. Good morning, everyone. Is that better?
Hi,
And
Sharon.
it looks like you got your camera fixed.
No, it's a different computer. I got it slightly better, but I just brought up my work computer. So
Okay.
yep. Since there's not much, I try to work as little as possible. So
So as good as we're all getting at the Zoom thing, I will bet dollars to donuts that sometime in the next hour, we will hear the phrase, you're on mute. You're on mute.
oh,
Once or twice, I'm sure.
I really like Andy's picture. You're going to have to tell me how to do that. Looks like you're sitting in your backyard and
Yeah, on your video thing, the video icon, you go there and you see a video settings.
what video icon?
When you stop video and start video, you should be able down on my screen is down in the lower left. You have a
Oh,
little
video
cam-
settings?
Yeah, there's a little
Okay.
video settings.
There's a little
There's
up arrow there.
Little
you
up
click.
arrow there. You click on the up
Yeah, and
arrow,
then what?
and you
No,
should
click
get
on the
a
button
settings
that says
pane.
stop video. The button says stop video next to the mute. Click on the video stop.
Yeah, I got it.
arrow on
And
the
I'm on
stop
that
video, and you
screen.
can choose a background there.
Oh, virtual background.
Virtual background.
And then it
exactly.
says choose virtual background, none.
So, you're right. So you wanna find yourself a great picture.
Oh, you have to upload your own picture.
You go ahead and but of course you're uploading it on your own computer. You're setting the setting on your own computer, so you're not have to.
Got
send
it.
to Zoom.
Okay. All right.
If
I
you
thought
click-
there was
Just pick
some,
the picture.
No, Sharon, if you click choose virtual background, there's some preset ones in there. The Golden Gate
Yeah, I
Bridge, the
didn't-
beach.
yeah, like the one you've got. I've seen tons of people having that one.
Choose
Yeah.
that one. So click up on stop video, then click on choose virtual background on select camera. And when you click on choose virtual background, there's
Yeah.
none, but then there's 6 choices next to it. The Golden Gate Bridge, some
Yeah, I
leaves, the moon, and just
I don't
touch
have-
one of those.
Yeah, I don't have any of those.
But you
Then
can
it's your
also
computer setting.
you can
Yeah.
also upload it because out on there was this choose virtual background, your little plus mark off to the right.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
add something and you can pick your own. And that's what I
Okay.
took from one of our water tours. That's from one of our CSU reservoirs.
Got it. Something I probably shouldn't try to do during a meeting.
Well, since it hadn't started yet.
Yeah, I'm flipping through and I don't see any. Oh, this computer, man, what a boring computer. It doesn't have any good downloads. Huh. Okay. I could put up some like private information in the background, huh?
Yeah,
Or
I
you
probably
can,
wouldn't want to do that.
you can pick one like I have, which has the waves, but
There
my
you go.
computer can't handle it, so you only get part of my face.
Ah.
It's like you're the invisible man.
Somebody with a Mac clicked on one the other day, and instead of the background changing, her face turned into a palm tree.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m.
Oh, in other words, we got
start the
to.
meeting
In other
if
words,
that's
yeah.
okay, and move on to our business.
Now I'm lost in space.
Yeah, that's
There you go.
cool.
Welcome,
I like
welcome to
that
our
one.
May 13th board meeting. Is everybody hearing me? Because I'm still hearing a lot of talking.
Loud and clear.
We're just ignoring you, Jill.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order and establish a quorum. Jessica, I'm hoping that you can provide introductions and ensure that we have enough voting members here to undertake our business for today.
Good morning. I can rattle off everybody on our roster real quick and make sure I caught everybody, and then a quorum.
That'd be great.
So I'll just name off everybody, and then afterwards I'll ask who I missed, and then we'll fill those in. So I've seen Jill Gabler, Andy Pico, Yolanda, Sharon Thompson, Bruce Davis, Val Carr, Dan Vanderwerf, Cammy, Dick Elsner, Norm Steen, Glant Kavnar, Craig Biondo, Irv Halter. So if you're a board member and I missed you, if you'll just let me know right now. Looks like we got everybody then.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, if you can kind of watch the participants and let us know when people arrive so we can welcome them. I did want to provide a formal welcome to our new board members. We have the mayor of Woodland Parks on our board now, Val Carr. Is Val here?
Right here, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
And
you.
we have trustee Margaret Peterson from Green Mountain Falls. Is Margaret here? Okay, and we have trustee William Shaw from Rama. And last but not least, we have William Gray from Cripple Creek Planning Director. He's our new non-voting member that your executive committee approved at our executive committee meeting last week. Are you here, William or Bill? Okay, well, everybody knows who our new board members are. Please welcome them when you see them again or see them on a Zoom call. Hopefully we will all get to see each other in person sometime soon. That's what I look forward to. Okay, next on our meeting agenda, and I have lost it, is approval of our agenda. Anybody have any concerns with our agenda today?
I'm still trying to find it.
Approve.
Uh-oh.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is our public comments, presentations. Is there any public on the call today that would like to speak in public comments? We would give you 3 minutes on an item that is not on today's agenda. Okay, hearing none. I have public comments, presentations. The first one is the pandemic and economic impacts of state transportation funds and economic recovery task force. And hopefully our CDOT director, Shoshana Liu, is on the line to provide that, that presentation. Director Liu, are you there?
Hi there, this is Lexi, her assistant. Shoshana is running
Hi.
just a few minutes late this morning. So
Okay.
if you would like to move on to the next agenda item or have something else to discuss, I believe she'll be on in just a few moments.
Okay, Lexi, just cut in and let us know that she's there, and we will try to get her on as soon as possible. I know she's busy. Okay, so the next one is the Older Americans Month proclamation. Dixie Wodell. Dixie, are you there?
I am.
Hello.
Hi.
Would you like to, I don't have the proclamation. Was someone going to read the proclamation? Here it is.
I've got it.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We can, Dixie. You're loud and clear.
Good. Okay. Here's the proclamation. Proclamation by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors in support of Older Americans Month, May 2020. Whereas the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, PPACG, includes a growing number of older Americans who make countless contributions to our community every day. And whereas the Pikes Peak region has a rapidly growing population of older adults, and whereas PPACG is stronger when people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds are included and encouraged to make their mark. And whereas Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments recognizes the importance of the physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being of its citizens. And whereas PPACG can support our community members by promoting independence, inclusion, and participation, engaging older adults through education, recreation, and service, and connecting people with opportunities to share their time, experience, and talents. Therefore, the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors recognizes May 2020 as Older Americans Month. We urge each resident to recognize older adults and the people who support them as essential members of our community. Resolved, approved, and adopted by the Board of Directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments this 13th day of May 2020 at Colorado Springs, Colorado. Signed, Jill Gabler, Chair, Dick Elsner, Secretary.
That was a lovely proclamation, Dixie. Thank you for reading that. And I couldn't agree more with its words of wisdom, especially now. Does anyone else want to speak on the proclamation before we move on?
I do have a couple of other comments, if I may add them at this time.
Of course.
In representing seniors in our area, just want to share some of the comments I've been hearing lately from seniors. And most of these seniors have somebody living in the house with them, so they're not necessarily totally isolated, but this is the comments people are making about how they feel. I feel old, not motivated. I feel like I'm disappearing. I get discouraged and quit. Can't get into a rhythm, no sense of urgency, no desire to do much, no patience. Need something meaningful to do for others. Being taken care of gives a feeling of worthlessness. I want to thank Silver Key and Fountain Valley Senior Center for giving meals out to people who need them, and the Colorado Springs Senior Center for their daily challenges. I think it's very vital.
Yes, thank you. That was lovely. Anyone else want to speak on this proclamation?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Who's speaking? Is that Jody?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair. Yes, I just wanted to include just a little bit of update around the Older Americans Month, in which this proclamation was created for. As Dixie mentioned, there's so many programs out there serving our seniors and have changed what they're doing. As part of the National Older Americans Month, the theme is Make Your Mark. And so we as a AAA team, along with others in the community, are collecting stories and information from seniors to create a virtual booklet about who they are and what they do and some of their experiences and some of their stories. So we hope to be able to present that at a future time as we collect that information. So that will be also a way to honor Older Americans Month this May. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. I'm sure we all look forward to seeing that booklet. That's great.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Stan. Quick comment.
Hi, Stan.
Thank you. Jody, that is awesome. Wow. Thank you for doing that. And I also know that our AAA team has been communicating with their clients, our older folks in the community that you've been interacting with, and just doing kind of checks with them to make sure that they're doing okay. Without getting to any names, how is everybody doing when those calls are made?
Well, it's a variety of information, Commissioner Pico. Much like Dixie shared, we have those people, whether they have someone living with them or they're in a larger community, who are feeling a little lost right now because of the urgency asking them to stay at home or to stay isolated. And of course, as you know, the entire Older Americans Act is predicated on reducing social isolation. So we're coming to a bit of a wall sometimes. But those outreach calls, whether done by my staff or other organizations, are really meeting a need to just allow people to vent, sometimes to just chat. Maybe all of their physical needs are met. They have their meals, they have their groceries, they have their pet, it varies, but still they need to talk with someone. And so our goal through this is to continue to reduce social isolation. It looks different now. It's going to look different in the future. The calls are still quite positive because they're appreciated, but we do hear a variety of responses from those folks. Our goal is to continue those through our staff efforts, as well as continue through some of the emergency funding to support our outside providers to be able to continue making those calls and those contacts as well. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
This
Jody.
is Sharon.
Okay, Sharon.
Dixie, thank you so much for reading that today. I really appreciate it. Very, very well written. Tell the seniors as you talk to them, they're not the only ones feeling all those things that you said. I think there's a lot of people that are feeling kind of lost and have kind of lost motivation. Sprucing up your house is exciting for the first week. And I think a lot of people are feeling kind of lost. And I know my son is in the disabled adult community, doesn't understand what's going on, how long it's going to take. So there's just a lot of people that are feeling it. So thank you for reminding us today of the seniors.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
I know it's presented during public comment. Do you need a motion to adopt?
No, we don't, not for a proclamation. Well, we don't in the city. Do we need one here? I don't think so.
Well, this is the motion says resolved, adopted, and approved by the board. Your call.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, we probably should have a motion to approve. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in the city, we don't approve proclamations. We only approve resolutions.
Oh, we take the proclamation as a first and then somebody seconds it and we vote. That's the way we do it.
So
And this is Commissioner Vanderwerf, I'll second, and we do vote on proclamations in the county.
Okay, so who made the motion?
The proclamation.
You did by letting it. So basically the chair does by the proclamation being read.
Okay, chairs don't make motions though.
Okay.
I heard there was a motion, but if there isn't one, this is Commissioner Vanderwerf. I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, that's great.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, thank you for all that parliamentary discussion. Let's move on to our consent items. You can see there are 3 items on our consent. Well, you will be able to see approval of our minutes from our April meeting, the summary of our financials, and membership appointment to the CAC. If there are no questions or if no one would like to pull anything off of it, I would like a motion to approve the consent calendar.
To approve?
I can't tell if it's off or on.
It's
You're
up
on.
now. It's up.
You're on, Yolanda.
Did I get a second for the consent calendar?
Second.
Second. Okay, Yolanda, go ahead.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, is Shoshana back yet? No? Okay, then let's.
She's on.
What?
Hello?
Hello? Oh, Director Liu, welcome. I saw you for a second. There you are.
I'm here.
Okay. Welcome to our May PPACG board meeting. We are very honored to have you with us this morning.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, can we bring her slides up? Okay. Please take it away when you're ready.
All right. Do I have control of the slides or just someone else click forward?
I don't know.
I'll control them for you if you just want to say next slide and I'll click over.
Okay. Thank you all for a few minutes to talk this morning. And I'll go. These are the slides we delivered to the Transportation Commission last week. So I'll use them as kind of a rough ballpark, but we'll just talk a little bit more generally about the exercise that we're going through as well. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Are they showing up for you?
Yes. So this is great. Okay. I'll do on this one for a moment. Oh, can you go to the previous one, please? What one before this? We advanced to.
This one?
No, previous one before. No, go back. Sorry. We're going in the wrong
Budget
direction.
impacts.
And this is
That the one?
Commissioner Stan. She's looking for a chart with the page number 2. You can see the page numbers in the lower right. There you go.
Yes. Thank you. So this slide, I want to pause on this one for a moment because this is just a quick timeline of the conversations we've been having with the Transportation Commission about budget impact and how we're doing scenario planning, given that there's just a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of the economic conditions and how much we're actually going to have in our capital planning budget. Given the the context and the rather bleak economic news that is coming in day by day, our view is that we have to be sort of mindful of what the kind of conservative scenarios are, but also be on a pathway where we're committed to our plan that we all worked on together. Have to be nimble if there's uncertainty that could be prolonged about dollars. The sense we have is that with hopefully we are within a few days of good news about that second tranche of COPs pursuant to Senate Bill 267. The Treasurer's Office has been working through really the rockiest of waters to keep that second tranche moving in a way where the budget forecast yesterday was something that was requested by the credit rating agencies to have in their package. I'm getting a note that my voice is very choppy. Do you want me to try and call in on the phone?
That might be easier, or just take the video off for you. Maybe that will help.
Is this better?
So far, let's see how it goes.
Okay. I can try a phone if it doesn't work. Sorry you can't see me, but better to be heard clearly. We are hopefully going to have clarity in terms of the timeline for the second tranche Senate Bill $267. Within a matter of days in the next week. So our planning scenario assumes that those dollars do come in, but it also assumes that we take some pretty rough cuts in terms of the revenues that are coming in through the gas tax and otherwise in terms of the general fund for the next couple of years. I don't know if folks saw, but the latest scenario that's being kicked around through the JBC has, as we expected, pretty severe cuts to the general funding for the next couple of years for CDOT, which was intended to pay the debt service associated with the debt funds that are coming in. We expected that because the cuts across the budget are quite significant right now. and assuming that we're just going to be in murky waters for the next couple of years. We slides just disappeared. Thanks. So I think the premise that we're kind of dealing with is that we have to plan for the worst, but work towards the best. So the idea being figure out what we would do if all that we had was kind of a worst case scenario, but then be very quickly prepared to add dollars back in as new amounts of money become clear to be able to deliver towards the $1.6 billion plan worked on so hard with all of you. So it's not that we drop the plan. If anything, I think given the uncertainty that we're dealing with right now, having a plan that there's buy-in towards is even more important than ever. But we just have to be prepared not to know all at once how much money we have or what we're dealing with, and to be able to budget in a way where we don't overcommit dollars. If there are periods of months or potentially even years before we know exactly how much we're going to have. I think in terms of federal congressional action, there's certainly talk about it. I'm hearing voice still very choppy, hard to understand. I'm going to hang up, or I'm going to mute myself and call in on the phone.
Okay,
Sorry for the technical challenges.
no worries. We'll just wait for you. Stand by.
This is Stan. While we're waiting, it was a little choppy, but I could understand what she was saying actually. So
Yeah, I could too. So I wasn't terribly, but it was.
It was getting too hard to follow.
getting worse.
It was pretty bad.
okay.
That is a nice background, Andy.
Yeah, we're all jealous. We're all going to be starting to do this now.
I took
Well, I
that
don't
picture
understand.
on
You
one
have
of
American
our,
behind you, so I'm good with that.
that's a Colorado Springs Utilities Reservoir.
Oh,
Now I have a flag in my background, and we've actually done some board meeting pledges of allegiance with my flag. How about that?
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
We do mine all the time, with the flag right behind me as well.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Good job, Norm.
I have a drape behind me that if nobody's not nice to me, I'll just open the drape and let the sunshine in. How's that? And then you won't have to look at me, huh? Oh.
Learned a little hack this week. You can press the space bar, press to talk. Even if you're on mute, that unmutes you just for the duration of the time the space bar is down.
Really?
Oh.
On mute.
Oh, that's magic.
Oh, I'm gonna try it. Oh, is it work? Oh, that's
Fine. Look at that. That does work. How about that?
cool. That's
Oh, that
so
is
much
awesome.
easier. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with getting the meeting ID. Give me one more moment.
Norm, thanks for that suggestion about the space bar. You guys have probably been doing remote meetings for decades, right? Up in Teller County?
By flag, by smoke signal, yeah.
I was gonna say, if you live in our county,
Stan, I stole some of your comments from a county commissioners meeting last night and used them at our council meeting in regards to that HR 6666 stuff going around. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
6666, is that the one I think it is?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Are you there,
Can you hear
Shoshana?
me okay now?
It's better. Yes, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
I
Much better.
apologize. I took off the slides because I was getting an echo of myself. So I'm just gonna talk off the cuff, and I think probably, especially since we've run through some time, it'll work better this way if you can hear me.
Okay.
So just to recap, if folks couldn't hear what we were talking about previously, the exercise that we're going through over the course of these few weeks with the Transportation Commission, is about recognizing that for the next while, there's going to be some uncertainty about what our total multi-year planning budget is like. We had worked over the past year to sort of program a $1.6 billion multi-year program that assumed, a fair degree of certainty about, how many dollars would be, in the total budget. I think that the line that we're trying to thread here is to, remain as committed as ever to that program being, a very carefully thought through, balanced program of projects, but also understanding that there's going to be a little bit more, of an erratic pattern to dollars coming in, than we had expected, because we were planning in a period of growth, and now we're looking at, probably a recession. So, the challenge is to stay firm to our plan, to be able to kind of continue to march in as straight a line as possible, but also to sort of revisit the cadence in a way where we don't commit dollars that we don't know that we have, in a way that could create, financial obstacles to us, in an economically uncertain situation. So the exercise that we are working through with the commissioners, and I saw that Commissioner Halter, is in the meeting too, is to be able to have sort of a worst case scenario where we quickly identify what we add back into the worst case scenario in hopes that we don't land on the worst case scenario. So, we have no intent of settling for the worst case. The idea is just to be able to sort of build in increments so that we don't commit dollars that we don't have, but we also, as soon as we get clarity on different components of funding, we're ready to add back in and, remain vigilant in building towards the $1.6 billion list. So the idea is to sort of set that floor of a project program, assuming that the math that is worked through in that PowerPoint deck, which you can peruse at your leisure, essentially it assumes that we have the second year tranche of COPs and not much more than that. So the idea is what is in that sort of floor scenario, and then what do you add back in as soon as you gain certainty about future packages of funding, which could come in a variety of shapes and times, given the rocky waters that we're expecting to be going through in the next couple of years. So, to the many conversations we've had before about being very clear about what projects, do and don't get done at different funding levels, I think the goal is to absolutely retain that approach. And, in fact, the most powerful case to, get additional funding, whether it's through the subsequent years of Senate Bill 267, federal dollars, or otherwise, is knowing exactly what projects are on the table. So, we're not changing that prioritization process, but this is more about the cadence of how we work towards the plan, in less certain waters than we were in before. So to just talk a little bit about how that exercise is being done, and this speaks to the last couple of meetings of the commission that we've had, as well as the ones that are coming up. The first order is sort of determining what projects on our plan have kind of existing commitments that we've made already, from an obligation standpoint. So, this is the multi-year projects where, like the GAP, where they're already under construction. It's the projects that have already gone all the way or almost all the way to an award with contractors so that we have a financial obligation. And it's the projects like the military access projects we all worked on together, where we have the federal grant that creates an obligation on our part to match the funds. And, I think I am very glad that we are on the hook to pay the match for that set of projects, because it means that, we have to sort of have those on the first year. So, I know that that's something we've gotten questions from a number of you about is, where do the military access projects fall? Those from our perspective are committed because we, A, the contract is actually awarded for most of them, but B, in order to get the grant that we all worked so hard to accrue, we have to pay those out. So that, that is in this base package we're talking about. Within those contours, having the regional equity and distribution that we have in the 4-year plan, it was never intended to be, able to be bifurcated year by year. So, taking a sliver of it doesn't have exactly the regional equity that the full plan has. So the idea there, again, is to think about not just that sort of floor scenario, but how we build back onto it in ways where, each step takes us, in a greater direction towards the equity that exists across the 4-year plan. In terms of the 10-year plan, that too remains the list that we build towards, but, just being realistic, we work towards the, getting back to that first 4 years first, and then, if we should have the lucky problem at some point of more funding becoming available, we have a very robust 10-year pipeline as well. So, we're primarily focused on those 4 years at the moment because we're trying to figure out, how we achieve that goal. That was the first stage of our list, but we certainly haven't forgotten about the 10-year list, and that that remains the slightly more aspirational goals. We look towards the future state where infrastructure could well be part of recovery packages and otherwise. To talk a little bit about some of the, and I think this was the original topic of the conversation that Andy had asked me to speak about, was the recovery working group that we've established through CDOT, sort of reporting into the Governor's Economic Task Force that's being chaired by Federico Pena and Betsy Markey from the Office of Economic Development. We set up sort of a task force of transportation experts from across the state. And Andy and John have been participating in that group, along with their counterparts from other MPOs and across the state. And the idea is to have a kind of brain trust that is able to talk about the role of infrastructure in seeding and economic recovery. The state where we're in right now, and transportation is not alone in this. Unfortunately, many sectors of the economy, many critical functions of government are kind of in the same boat right now. That the state that we're in right now is relief. It's about figuring out how to kind of protect the base that we thought we had before the world changed. Looking longer term, transportation can and should play a strong role in economic stimulus and in both the job creation and sort of the seeding of assets that actually improve the economy longer term as well. So the mission for this group is to sort of articulate for the state of Colorado what that contribution of transportation infrastructure looks like, to be able to have that be a voice in this overall conversation. So what we are working on with that group is kind of a thought piece that we will be talking through in the next few weeks, that explains why transportation is important when you're thinking about building back up to a stronger economic period from a weaker one. And it will be something that we can point to kind of tie the pieces together for folks who are not in the field, and be able to explain why transportation matters. It's going to reassert the importance of the plan that we all developed as our kind of marching orders for having a strategy to what we would build. But it will also talk about the construction sector and the importance of the job creation aspects in the infrastructure space, and it will talk. It will help to reframe all of the work that we've done over the last year or so in a context where a plan that we built in a strong economic period becomes the plan that we work towards, and one that's a little bit harder. And what we've been saying is we set a goal that we believe is a good goal, and we don't give up on a goal just because it suddenly got harder to achieve. We just have to reframe it in a way where we're being mindful of the world around us being different than it was 2-3 months ago, and figuring out how we come up with a different plan of action to get to the place that we want to get to. So my hope is that when we share this, the outputs of this strategy, there will be no surprises, because we, from our perspective, we're being boringly consistent about the goals that we put forward. we didn't go through a year-plus long planning effort just to, come up with a different list, when times get harder. In fact, we believe it's important to double down on the results of this process that we all worked so hard on. So, in a climate where, dollars are harder to come by than they, were a few months ago, we stay, if anything, even more vigilant towards that plan that we all developed working together with folks across the state. So, it's going to have a lot of familiar content, but just be explained in a context where we're thinking about the economy differently. So with that, knowing that we lost the first few minutes to some technical difficulties, which I apologize for, I'm happy to stay on and do a little bit of question and answer if you have time.
Great. Thank you, Director Liu. That was very helpful. Do any board members have questions for Director Liu?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Hi.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Shoshana. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great. I'm glad you're surviving through all of this. The first thing I wanted to do is just say thank you, because I am aware that and you can correct me if I don't have this exactly right, but you had on your list of projects in our community. There's several in there, but one in particular I'm going to make note of is the repaving of 24 in the Ute Pass area. This is from Cascade to Manitou Springs. It's my understanding that that project is going forward and that construction work will take place this summer. If that is a true statement, which is what I had been told, I just want to express my appreciation that you are going to go forward with that project. And then also,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Rich, do you want to just kind of speak to the status of that one? Because that project is pretty far along.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that is one of our regular surface treatment projects, so it's not affected by 267G.
Correct. It is just one of our regular surface treatment jobs, but it is moving forward this summer.
Yeah.
Great.
But we've already gone through procurement for that one, correct?
That is correct.
So again, I just want to say thank you. That's certainly one of several indicators that say you all remain committed to doing what you can with the funding available to support our community, and I just want to say thanks. I have to imagine also the work going on in Denver is pretty tough work with the challenges that we're going to have, and trying to figure out $3 billion plus in the state budget is going to be really tough for everybody up there. I'm sure you're in that mix, Shoshana. And the one last thing, and it's just kind of an open thought. I don't know if there's been any discussion from the state going to the feds on this, but let me just put the idea out. One of the big things that we're going to have to do is get people back to work. And then at the same time, we have a whole bunch of road projects, and this is not just in our community or in our state, but across the nation. Seems to me like what a great opportunity to maybe have the feds maybe pour a lot of money, because they're pouring a lot of money into things already, trying to keep the economy alive. I think what a better way to do that than to pour that into transportation and put people back to work and actually get productivity out of those folks, because they're working on building transportation infrastructure. So I don't know if that's the conversation you've heard about that's going on either in the state or at the federal level, but it seems to me like that would be a great approach.
Thank you for that. So a couple of quick follow-ups on that. Rich spoke to the first project, so glad that we're able to keep that moving. And as a general matter, we've tried very hard to keep the projects where the funding is certain right now moving, because we think it's important to maintain as much stability as we can during a very confusing moment. So while there's questions about the 267 list, for this season, we've really tried to keep the base list as consistent as possible, because the industry was expecting it, and we felt it was important to have there be sort of some semblance of a steady cadence. So we're very proud that we were able to keep so many of the base projects, including that one, moving normally, or close to normally. In terms of the federal conversation, there's sort of two aspects to it that, and I actually had the opportunity to brief our congressional delegation on the importance of transportation right now last week, continuing those conversations this week. So, have been working very closely with the governor's office on sort of articulating the importance of these kinds of investments right now. There's two things which I think it's a bit important to differentiate. The first is that we and every other state DOT that I know of have a very immediate issue where, because of the revenue loss that has very suddenly fallen upon all of us, there's a fairly immediate issue that's not even future stimulus. It's about protecting what we have. So, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, which is our trade group, put out a request to Congress for, the number they came up with, which, there's not going to be a perfect number right now, but it's a decent order of magnitude, is that, they estimate that roughly $50 billion across the country, is probably what's needed, not even to add on to what we thought we had, but to sort of avoid agencies across the country making very deep cuts to programs that were sort of assumed in the base. Their estimate, which I think is unfortunately probably pretty close, is that the revenue loss that states are looking at, averages about 30% of the revenues that were expected. In some places they're seeing that as high as about 50%. So, there is a very urgent issue, similar to what other industries are facing, where because of the loss of, people aren't driving, so gas tax is down, right? It's not, it's not rocket science, unfortunately. And, with us, the combination of very deep losses to the general fund across all programs, including ours, combined with the drop in direct revenue to transportation, means that we're facing the same kind of thing as everything else. So, that's a kind of here and now problem, which is separate from there being future conversations about what you do. If this pans out to be a multi-year event, as economists are projecting, the challenge right now is a little bit different, but not dissociated from the challenge a year or two out. So, we're kind of trying to make sure that people realize that there's an immediate issue that precedes the longer term conversation about, what you do to get the economy back going a little bit farther down the line. So, I think it's worth just talking through the difference between those, because I'm unfortunately not sure it's fully appreciated yet that this problem is coming at us fast. And I've had this conversation with a few of my counterparts in the last couple of days, and unfortunately, everybody, including the Federal Highway Trust Fund, is having the same problem.
Thank you.
So Jill,
Yes?
this is John Leo Santos. I think the HERO Act or HEROES Act was introduced yesterday. So it's just
Still a draft bill. There's, I think, 14.7 billion in federal transportation dollars that would be distributed through the, what we call STP Metro formula. So there will be some coming into the MPO area and some coming into the state. So hopefully that will be something that stays in that final HEROES bill. And it's supposedly going to be match-free dollars, so you wouldn't have to do that. It would be nice if we would be able to sort of be able to match federal against federal, but that's not in there. Hopefully that'll be something that gets added. So just wanted to make sure that that was thrown out there.
Great.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think that it's an important first step that draft bill, had that language in it. The ASHTO request, which we think is probably a good order of magnitude to be looking at, was for about 50. That had about 14. So, look, anything would help, but I think that conversation will evolve, and the bill certainly seems to have a long way to go before it's final. But definitely an important step that there was something in there, and it being match free is a big deal. And I'm normally a big believer that the match is important so that everybody has skin in the game. But right now, particularly for our smaller local and municipal partners, there's a match is going to be hard. While we're on the subject of match, there's something that we're going to be talking, hopefully implementing in the next week or so, to try and help local partners with their match requirement. Let me do my best at explaining this overly weedy concept in English. There is a provision in the highway authorization that effectively, if you run toll roads, you get these credits that can be used to kind of buy down match requirements. So it doesn't give you extra money, but it allows for a greater percentage of the total to be federal relative to state. It kind of buys your way out of match. They're called toll credits. because of our network of toll roads, we at the state level have a pretty sizable bank of these credits, which we are working to make available to local partners who are having trouble meeting match. So, you know, say that you had an $80 federal, $20, you know, I'm just using basic numbers to show the concept, investment that you were going to make. We could make $20 worth of toll credits available, which wouldn't give you $20, but it would make it so that if you could reduce the total cost to 80, you could do 100% federal. So, you know, it's certainly not a perfect tool, but it's something that we have. And because we're, you know, trying to use every tool we have at our disposal, we're going to make a balance of these credits available to local partners to be able to, you know, buy down your federal match requirements. So, you know, again, it's something we can put on the table right now that we have. So hopefully that will help a little bit with the match issue in the near term.
Okay, great. Anyone else have any questions for Director Liu before we let her go? Okay, Director Liu, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. We know you're busy. We don't envy the decisions you're making right now, but we're grateful you're there and that you're really working hard for the state of Colorado. We are very grateful.
Well, thank you for having me, and sorry for the technical hiccup, and happy to try again next time.
Great, thank you. No
Thank
worries.
you so much.
Okay, bye-bye. That moves us on to our action items. And our first action item is the auditor's report. And I think Casey is here for that.
Yes, Jill, I'm here. This is Casey Partridge, Finance Manager, PPACG. I'm here to present our auditors from Stockman, Cast, and Ryan. They've been our auditors for the last 3 years. They have completed the 2019 audit. They were in our offices in November and March to complete the on-site, and we are asking when, after the presentation, that the board approve the final audit and management letter. And if there's any questions, I'd like to present Steve Hochstetter from Stockman, Cast, and Ryan and Louis Malloy. They are both on the Zoom meeting.
Great. Good morning, Steve and Louis. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Casey. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to start out by just first saying thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to serve as your auditors. I'm Steve Hochstetter. I'm one of the partners with the firm, Stockman, Cast, Ryan & Company. And with me, electronically anyhow, is Louis Malloy. Louis is one of our audit seniors. And we have 2 documents to go over, as Casey mentioned. One is a governance letter, and I believe it's attachment 5A or agenda item 5A, attachment 1 in your packet, which is on the screen. Louis is going to start out by going through this governance letter, and then I'll go through the draft of the report.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Louis. This letter that we're going to be going over, it's 3 pages long. Basically contains our required communication to those charged with governance and kind of briefly explains how the audit went overall. The first paragraph states that we have audited the financial statements, PPACG, for the year ended December 31, 2019. The second paragraph, under qualitative aspects of accounting practices, talks about how management is responsible for the accounting policies used, which are further described in note 1 of the financial statements. We noted that no new policies were adopted or changed in the current year. The next paragraph starts with accounting estimates. Basically, all financial statements have estimates, and in the middle of the paragraph, it details that the most sensitive estimates are the estimated useful lives of assets, collectability of accounts receivable, and potential refunds of any disallowed costs related to the government grants. Turning to the next page. These first 3 paragraphs basically explains that we encountered no significant difficulties in performing the audit. We identified no misstatements and had no disagreements with management. In the middle of this page here, under management representations, basically states that we will have management sign a representation letter at the end of the audit, attesting to the accuracy of the financial statements. The next paragraph talks about how management may opinion shop to get a second opinion, but to our knowledge, this has not occurred. The second to last paragraph under other audit findings or issues states that we generally discuss a variety of matters with management throughout the course of the year, and our responses were not a condition of our retention. The last paragraph on this page, which continues on to the next page, states that we applied limited procedures to the management's discussion and analysis and the budgetary comparison schedules, which are required supplementary information. And as we did not audit this information, we do not express an opinion or provide any assurance on those information. The last paragraph on the last page, where it starts, we were engaged, simply states that we were engaged to report on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which we compared and reconciled to the underlying accounting records. And that pretty much summarizes the governance letter, and I will now turn it over to Steve.
All right, thanks, Louis. So I think the takeaway from that, and it took 3 pages to say it, but is that the audit went very well and we had excellent cooperation from management. So I'll walk you through the draft of the report, and I'm going to just point out what I think are the key points, some of the highlights, and just sort of what's in the report so that, you know, allow you to drill down into more details at a later point if you would like. So if we turn to the page, Independent Auditors Report, I think it's page number 17 in the packet. This page is our report on your financial statement. So yeah, it's up 1 page prior to 2 pages prior to the page it's showing right now. So it should be, yeah, up a little higher. Still back 2 or 3 pages. Right, yeah, right there, perfect. Oh, 1 more page past the table of contents. There we go. So this page, it's our report on your financial statements, and this is really the key communications in the audit report. It points out what management's responsibilities are, and that management is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements. Our responsibilities is to perform the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards for the purposes of expressing an opinion on the financial statements. And the opinion's at the bottom of this page, where we state the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. Turning to the next page. The next page, that first paragraph, points out that there is supplemental information on pages 3 through 7, which is management's discussion and analysis, and a budgetary comparison on pages 20 through 21. Those pages we do not express an opinion on. There is other supplemental information which is addressed in the next paragraph. This relates to the schedule of federal expenditures, which we do express an opinion on and believe it's fairly stated in all material respects. And then finally, the last paragraph on this page points out that there are some additional reports that are required by government auditing standards, and we'll see those at the back of the report. Pages 3 through 6 is management's discussion and analysis. So this is management's narrative of the financial statements, and it begins on the next slide. And it continues through page 24. And I'm not going to walk you through this, just point out that it's in here. So if we go to the statement of financial position, which is like 3 or 4 more slides. Couple more, I believe. There we go, right there. The statement of net position is a government-wide presentation of the financial statements. And if we just go back one more page, this presents the assets and liabilities of the organization on what's referred to as the economic resource method or the accrual basis of financial statements. So it presents all of the organization's assets or liabilities. And just a couple of the key things to point out here is the organization's cash and cash equivalents increased about $340,000 over the prior year. Total liabilities increased about $100,000 related to that unearned revenue of $114,000 that you see in the middle of the page. Your net position, which is your total assets less your liabilities, increased by about $150,000, which is about a 6% increase over the prior year. If we turn to the next page is the statement of activities. The statement of activities presents the revenues and expenses of the organization, again on an accrual basis. And if you look at the first column, your direct expenses increased about $1.3 million over the prior year. That increase was almost entirely in the aging program. And that increase is a result of, if we move over to the fourth numerical column, receiving additional revenues. You received additional federal and state grants of about $1.3 million. Of which 1.2 was spent in the area of the aging programs. If we go to the third line from the bottom, the line $146,000, again, that's your change in net position. If we were to borrow for-profit lingo, we would call that net income. So it's your revenues over your expenses. Pages 9 and 10, the next two pages, present the balance sheet and the revenues and expenses on a modified accrual basis. So this page shows what your current financial resources are as well as your current obligations. The next page, page 10, is a reconciliation of the two presentations of your assets and liabilities between the two different methodologies of accounting. Page 11, the next page, again, is your revenues and expenses measured on this modified accrual basis. And page 12 is a reconciliation between the two methodologies. Beginning on page 13, note 1 is a summary of your significant accounting policies. And this starts on our page numbering 13 and continues over through page 17. And the main thing to really mention here is what Lewis mentioned earlier, is your accounting policies are consistent with the prior year. As a result, this disclosure is identical to the prior year report. So if we move over to page 17, note 2, is just a brief disclosure on your budgetary process. There we go, yep. And then at the bottom of this page, and it continues over the next, is a disclosure of your deposits and investments. Note 4 is a disclosure of capital assets. It shows what the increases were as well as the depreciation that's been recognized and which programs it was charged to. Note 5 at the bottom of this page is a disclosure of the single employer defined contribution plan that's in place and what the funding policies are. And then the last note on page 19, just simply exposing or disclosing that you are exposed to various risks and what your policies are with respect to those. If we look at the two more slides, the next page is just a divider sheet. If we go to the page after that, is your revenues and expenses compared to budget. As you can see, your revenues were $520,000 below budget, but you adjusted for that by looking a little bit further down on the page. Your expenditures were $666,000 below budget. So you had a budget that was based on a break even with your revenues and expenses offsetting, and you can see your revenues exceeded your expenditures by $146,000. Beginning on page 22, so 2 or 3 more slides, is a disclosure of the federal awards that the organization received, both directly from the federal government as well as pass-through grants. The next page shows the dollar amount of funds that you pass through to your subrecipients, totaling about $2 million. Then the next section of the report is a compliance and internal control section. Rather than walk you through the individual pages, I'm going to bring you to near the back of the report. It's our page number 28. Page number 28, it's titled Schedule of Findings and Question Costs. And this page really summarizes, right there, yep, summarizes the audit as a whole. So on line 1, just indicating that the type of auditor's report issued on your financial statements was the unmodified. That's that first report we looked at, which also referred to as the clean opinion. So it's the type of opinion that you want to receive as a board. There's a report on internal control that we just skipped through. But the key points of that report are that there were no material weaknesses identified, or there are no significant deficiencies identified, and no instances of non-compliance that's material to the financial statements that were noted. The next section, federal awards, one of the reports is a specific report on compliance with your federal awards. One section relates to internal controls specific to the federal awards, and there were no material weaknesses identified or significant deficiencies. The type of report that we issued on the compliance is the unmodified. Again, it's the type of report that you want to receive. Then line 3 there, any audit findings that are required to be disclosed. There were no such findings. Then item 4 just discloses the programs that were required to be tested as major programs, and that the organization qualified as a low-risk auditee. The last couple of pages are just simply indicating that there were no findings related to the current year. And the last page is that there were no findings related to the prior year that needed to be addressed in the current year. So I know I went through that rather quickly. Again, I tried to hit what I think were the key points and just really point out what information is in there. Does anyone have any questions?
Great job. Although it was quick, it was very thorough, and I appreciate that. Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. This is
Okay.
Yolanda. Steve, that is one of the clearest and best presentations that I've heard in a long time. The way you went from page, the way you hit the highlights and explained others. That is like, for me, not being able to see was like, as I was listening, I was like, oh God, I love this. So I just want to tell you that was one of the best presentations that I've heard.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very generous of you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Would you like to make a motion to approve the audit?
I make a motion to approve the audit.
I
Ms. Andy, I'd
second,
like to say,
and congratulations to Casey and her staff.
Yes, very much so. Is there any more discussion before we vote on the audit? Okay, well, once again, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Louis. I appreciate your time today. Great job, everyone. This is a great audit, and PPACG should be very, I don't know, you should be very proud of this audit. So with that, all those in favor of approving the audit, please signify by saying yay.
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 As anybody opposed, say nay. Okay, that's a horsey nay. The audit is approved unanimously. Sorry, I'm getting caught up in the horse comment. Thank you all. So with that, we can say goodbye to our auditors and move on.
Thank you, and we'll leave the meeting.
Okay, move on to our next item. I have to bring this back up. The fiscal year 20 and 21 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment number 1. And I believe this is Catherine.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Catherine Wenger, Senior Transportation Planner, PPACG. So a couple months ago, we brought this item to you as an information item. A couple things have changed since then, but this item is for action this month. This is for an amendment to our UPWP, or our Unified Planning Work Program. It's for federal fiscal years 2020 and 2021 that we're currently in. You adopted this plan last year, and now we need to make an adjustment based on updated costs that we received from CDOT, and also additional requests that we had from Federal Transit, and some additional projects that we're now doing. And so actually we do need to make updates to this to make sure that what the staff is doing reflects what our program says, since this is a federally required document to ensure that we're spending our federal funds well. And so this amendment, like I said, is for updated revenue and expenditure figures that you can see in your, or that will be in your attachment 1. Make sure I said that right. Yes. And so attachment 1 outlines the, there you go, thank you. The attachment, what the original document is as approved by you last year, and then the right side is the updates that we would like to make, and they're highlighted in red. And I won't go through the details because it's just making updates to each of our programs, our work programs, based on the additional funding or roll forward money that we had from the previous year. And so it highlights that. It also highlights updated language that includes more references to public transportation per our Federal Transit Administration requests. They just wanted to make sure that we included the wording or the items that we are already doing. It's not additional work, it's just work that we were already doing. It just makes sure it's highlighted. And also we're doing additional projects, and is a safety campaign. A lot of state is working on amping up their safety program, and I believe the state is working on a 0 deaths goal. And so in this area, we would like to start a safety campaign, and Jason Nelson, or not Jason Nelson, excuse me, that's the CDOT guy, Jason O'Brien, the PPACG, is leading that effort here at PPACG. And so those are the main highlights of change that we are requesting.
Great, thank you. It's very little on the screen, but are there any questions from board members?
Yeah, this is
page 59.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure who was speaking.
I'm sorry, that was Sharon.
Hi,
Page
Sharon.
59.
Okay, what on 59?
I'm going to toggle between 2 computers, making sure I'm on the correct. This is agenda item 5C.
5 Bravo.
Okay, I'll save my question when we get to 5C.
Okay, and
Yeah,
Stan, I think
was this 5C or 5?
This is 5B as in Bravo.
Okay, so I'm looking down at the bottom of page where it has all the.
You're cutting out, Sharon, so it's hard to understand what you're saying.
If I'm on the correct item on that page, there's a lot of vacancies. Can you hear me better now?
No.
I'll type.
It's okay.
And
Yeah,
Madam
go ahead.
Chair, while that is ongoing, if you don't mind, if the team could just scroll down through the charts again. I just it is hard to read them on the paper that I printed out. So if we could just scroll down just a little bit, I'd like to just be able to review them on the screen. If we've got them on the screen, I can actually read what's in red. It's not easy, but I can.
Okay, so Sharon has typed a question in and it says, I am looking at the vacancies at the page and wondering if we need to help fill those.
And I think she might be referring to 5C for that question.
Yeah, Andy wrote that's for the next item, Air Quality Committee. Is that correct? Sharon, are you comfortable waiting until we hit the next item for that question? Have we lost Sharon? Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of typing. Is that Catherine? Or is it someone else? Please make sure you're on mute unless you're Catherine. Anna, have you gotten what you need or do you have questions?
This is Commissioner Stan. I do have a question based on what I'm looking at.
Okay.
So if I could just ask the staff, when we're going from kind of the central column, which is all in black, to the column on the right, which has numbers in red letters, and there's a fair number of them, there are a lot of adjustments, some numbers that are going up and going down. Could you just kind of, we don't need to go through every one of them, but just kind of give us some examples of where the number had been adjusted up or adjusted down and the rationale for some of those things. I think I know what's going on here, but I'd like to kind of hear it.
Sure, of course. So in general, we did have a little bit more money in roll forwards. Excuse me, sorry, Brace is breaking up. That we had estimated, and now it was finalized by CDOT, and so we adjusted based on that. And so that was kind of the starting point of what we needed to adjust all of our numbers. But we also had additional staff member that was hired, and we also changed project priorities. So for instance, last year was a lot of heavy work in our long range plan. And so that task needed more money last year. And it was the need was estimated previously. And so now we're changing our work program budgets based on what we know now to be where our priorities are. And so, and then John also adjusted the budget for PPA budget, which is slightly different than this program, but not much. And so this needed to be changed based on that as well. And so, for example, you'll see on that page, but she was pulled up. It's even hard for me to see, so I apologize. Our 607 program, that's actually our environmental program. It was just changed based on what actually was used last year. And so it was just an adjustment to make sure that we're actually putting real numbers down versus estimates. And so we're just making those adjustments on that. And I don't know if John wanted to add anything to that.
It sounded about right. Again, there's
two sets of actuals versus estimates, right? So there's the money that's coming in that we have to make the adjustment, actuals versus estimate. And then there's the actual division of staff labor that we have to make the adjustment, actuals versus estimates. So it's just the overall accounting to make sure that everything jives within the tolerance that the feds allow.
Okay, great. And then just kind of a few more questions. And if maybe we could continue to scroll down the page that is on the screen at the bottom, there is text and it says safety campaign and data. This is the stuff in red. And then there's also UCCS Economic Forum data, which those apparently are two things that have been added. So can I presume that there's something in one of the red numbers about adding a little bit of money to a safety campaign or enhancing a safety campaign. And then with like UCCS Economic Forum, it must mean that we contributed in some way to funding the forum or supported it somehow. Are those accurate reflections of those words?
So yes, so we'll start one at a time. We'll start with the UCCS forum. Our model is data intensive, so we need to collect data. And as a sponsor of the UCCS forum,
every month, Tatiana Bailey and Rebecca send out the data that we take and then we use to sort of match against our land use and other models. So it's sort of instead of paying lots of money to a lot of different consultants to get data, we found that it's probably more efficient to just sponsor the UCCS forum so we get the dashboard Tatiana sends out. On the second one, we heard last year concern about the overall safety within the region. We have a lot of people doing a lot of different things. PPACG didn't want to reinvent the wheel or duplicate anyone else's effort. So Jason, who has given you a couple of presentations over the year, sort of reached out to all the different players and sort of found the best bang for the buck would be moving forward to see if we can't move the needle on improving safety within the region. The outcome of that was a safety education campaign. And so we wanted to make sure that we move some money around within the consultant services. It's still under the consultant, overall consultant number didn't change. But again, we got rid of some of the other consultants that was providing data that we didn't need anymore, or thought we could get more efficiently through things like UCCS. And we took that money and we moved it over to the safety campaign. So Jason, at this point, when the UPWP gets approved, we'll put together a scope of work and go out to a consultant, call for proposals to hire a consultant, and then we'll move forward putting together the safety campaign. And again, we just want to make sure that it's transparent. We could have just probably left 50,000 within the consultant, but we wanted to specifically call it out and make sure everybody knew that this is something we're moving forward with.
Great, thank you. And then we're on page 56 on the display. Could we scroll back to the middle of 55 because there's a bunch of other sentences in red text, and I'd like to just kind of scan through those. I have them on a printout in my hand, but it's really hard to read the text. So if we can just scroll up to 55. Okay, there we go. Excellent. So there's about developing, approving, and monitoring federal performance measures, which I know we've discussed in previous meetings. There's increasing coordination with MMT to help maintain transit tip funding allocations. There's monitoring and updating federal performance measures. There's also MPO system performance reports, public transportation agency safety plans. Those all sound good. I just wanted an opportunity to actually read them. Okay, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Stan. Are there any other questions? And if not, I would like a motion to approve this amendment number 1.
And this is Commissioner Vandorf. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the action item 5B. That's the 2020 and 2021 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment 1.
Great, thank you. And Sharon has seconded via chat, so I will vocalize that. Any other questions before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of the Amendment 1, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any nays? Okay, motion passes. We are on to our third and final action item of the day, and that is the updates to the Air Quality Technical Committee structure and bylaws.
Madam Chair, I'll just kick this off real briefly, and then I'll hand it off to Samantha Bailey, who's with us. This is
of an item that we started. I think we started a discussion with the board on this back in March, and it basically it's reconstituting, reforming, if you will, in some ways, the Air Quality Technical Committee. They went dormant for a little while. I think we've talked about this, how it kind of went dormant because we had some turnover in staff and didn't have an environmental planner for a little while. Plus, it also went dormant because we thought air quality was, we were free and clear there and didn't have any worries until we discovered about a year and a half ago, we had some, significant ozone concerns about getting closer to the EPA level. So when Samantha came on board, we had to really reconstitute that committee. And to be honest with you, struggled a little bit with who were actually the voting members and real members representing the respective jurisdictions on the committee. So it's taken a little bit of research to reconstitute and identify who represents which jurisdiction. But also, as Samantha and I were discussing this with the technical committee, we realized that we could probably use some additional expertise around the table. So we're proposing a couple of additional positions be added to the committee as well. And I know Samantha's discussed this with the technical committee. So we're looking for final direction if we could today. But with that, let me hand it over to Samantha.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. So yes, good morning, everyone. I hope you and your family are happy and healthy during this time. I'm Samantha Bailey, the environmental planner for PPACG. Within your board package is a memo providing detail regarding current AQTC membership, as well as the AQTC bylaws with my suggested changes. As you may know, our region is inching closer to going out of compliance with the Federal Clean Air Act for ozone pollution. And for new members of the board, I'll be sure to connect with you in the near future to provide you more data regarding air quality in our region. So if we do go above the ozone standard, this has major financial and regulatory repercussions that will impact our region. So to ensure that we remain in compliance with the Clean Air Act, as well as prepare for a potential non-attainment designation, I'm looking to strengthen the Air Quality Technical Committee by updating its membership bylaws. As you may know, AQT was dormant some time due to my position being vacant and, as Andy mentioned, some staff turnover. When the committee restarted participation in early 2019, the group recognized that a lot of work will need to be done in order to reduce ozone pollution. This meant finding ways to ensure that QTC will reach its full potential. At the March Board of Directors meeting, I brought to you my suggested changes to the bylaws as an informational item. And considering the feedback that I received, I updated the bylaws to include 3 new at-large positions: an environmental interest group, a public transport authority, and a chamber of commerce organization. These groups were selected to assist with ozone reduction strategies, as well as being identified as key players that will be impacted with a potential non-attainment designation. PPCG would recommend these large positions to be voting members, but we are flexible and will accept an award on this manner. We recommend this because all actions with AQTC members will ultimately go to you, the board of directors, for final approval. Along with the new at-large positions, there are a number of member governments who hold vacancies on the committee. And you can find that position list within your memo for reference. And with that, we have a small number of voting members who hold active participation on the committee. So because of this, PPACG is bringing this to the direction of to the board of directors rather than a formal approval process. But the current participants of AQTC were very involved with these updates to the bylaws, and we're part of a lot of discussion on what we feel AQTC will look like in the future. Next for you today is to approve the updated bylaws to include the new at-large positions. I also ask that if you see that your jurisdiction is not represented, or if you have an idea for who should be represented in the at-large positions, please bring me your nominations on whom you would like represented on the Air Quality Technical Committee sometime within the 2 weeks. This person who you nominate would be attending regular, just 1-hour meetings to assist in developing strategies for ozone and include those strategies in our Ozone Advanced Program document. They should either have an interest or technical background in air pollution, or may have a potential impact on a non-attainment designation, and they can work with preparations on what would be required with a non-attainment designation. With these nominations, we'll be bringing to you a formal appointment list of all AQTC committee members next month. And then this way, the entire committee will have an official membership date. So do you have any questions for me on these changes for AQC, the committee, or bylaws?
Okay. Sharon has a question. It is through the chat. It says, would the transit provider be similar to the position COS/fountain share? Oh. And I'm sorry.
I don't know if my audio's working. Is it working now?
It is Sharon. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for the transition, Fountain and Colorado Springs share it with every other year so that one provider doesn't get, we're both transit providers, and just to provide a little bit more, small transit provider versus large transit providers. So since I see that positioning on it as a membership edition with that, also kind of flip-flop back and forth every other year in terms of like we're doing with the position.
I would like to ensure consistency. I didn't think about, I haven't thought of that idea. I think it's a really good one, and I think it'd be beneficial. So if the board feels that this is the right direction to go for the public transit position, I'm more than willing to coordinate the logistics for that membership.
It would just make sense to kind of have it the same year Fountain has, lead, they would have lead on this, and vice versa the year Colorado Springs had, so that position.
Yeah.
And then I also was wondering, are the public, these 3 recommended positions that are going on, are those going to be voting or non-voting members?
PPACG recommends voting membership for the at-large positions. When I brought this to the board workshop last week, there was feedback on having these positions being non-voting. As I mentioned, PPACG is flexible with this decision. So as long as I feel like these organizations are represented on the committee, as long as they're there, I'm happy with it. I do recommend them being voting just so they have some authority to implement potential ozone reduction strategies within their organizations. But that's something that I'm willing to leave up for discussion if others feel different.
I would only even go along with this if they were non-voting members. That's a lot of money going through it, and policy being made by non-elected people. And I also, I only agree with the first 2. I do not agree with the environmental interest group being on there.
Yeah, other questions or concerns or thoughts from board members?
Yes, Andy. I largely agree with Sharon. I voiced some concern at the workshop about having voting members in there. I think we have parallel on our board here. We have the non-voting participation by a number of groups. I'd like to keep that voting membership tight. I'm not in favor of any advocacy groups having, regardless of where they're coming from, to be involved in voting on these things. By all means, I have them in as non-voting. I share Sharon's concerns, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, Andy, thank you.
This is Yolanda, Jill.
Hi, Yolanda.
Hi. I'm kind of on the other end. I think it's important that there be the 3 at-large as voting members. And you really don't have a voice unless you're voting. And I think the concern with the environmental group, especially having that voice, needs to be heard, and it needs to be on that committee. So as well as the transit. And so I think like Mountain Metro does have a great impact on the air quality here because just of it's got 9 times larger than Fountain Valley, but I wouldn't fight over that. But I think it's important that this be a voting committee, and to keep in mind that the military is already on this committee as well, and that they are only making recommendations to the board. So it is the board voting people that make that actually make the decisions. And it's not really, I mean, and we can look at the recommendations with a balanced view, with all perspectives. And I really think it's important to have that voice and that vote. So that's where I stand on it. And with that being said, I'd like to move to approve that we do have this committee with the 3 at-large members and that they are voting members.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda. For the record, I agree with Yolanda. I believe these voices, all these voices should be heard. They have a vote, always knowing that their decisions and recommendations come back to us, the elected officials. But I don't want to, I mean, as Samantha has worked with this group and created these new positions on this committee, I want to give them all a voice, and we want to hear from them. I mean, that is our role, to hear from the folks, the committee members that we put into place here. So with that, I can't second the motion, but I would appreciate a second. Okay, so am I to understand nobody's going to second the motion? I just want to make sure before we drop the motion. If I can't get a second, then I would appreciate another motion.
Zandy, I'll move we adopt the bylaws with the exception that those members be non-voting.
Okay.
This is Norm. I will second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Excuse me?
Discussion. I just like to make a comment that a comment was made that the military are on the board, but if you look at the chart, the military is on the board as non-voting members.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, is there any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I have one other question.
Okay.
If you go down to page 4 of 9,
okay,
bylaws, the section additional criteria, there's a new addition there in red. The paragraph talks about the criteria for members to be selected, but the item B doesn't seem to pertain to that. I'm not sure where that item B came from. It just seems to be inconsistent with the text. And I just asked staff to make a comment.
Was that page 2, 3?
4.
4. Not 2, not 3, 4. Can we get to 4?
Additional criteria. The new inserted item B may have potential business impact due to poor air quality. Doesn't have anything to do with the selection criteria for a member.
Yes, and this is Samantha Bailey speaking to this. I included that additional criteria because with these at-large members, they don't necessarily work directly with air quality, but if they go into a non-attainment designation or if our region goes into that designation, those folks should be involved because they will be impacted with that designation. For example, an increase of business requirements, having someone represented on AQT like the Chamber of Commerce, so they're prepared for a potential non-attainment designation, having that kind of scenario, having them on this committee, so I included the additional criteria for JOB.
I'm wondering if that's a criteria for a technical committee, though. You know, the technical committee is the people who are trained in this, where the business committee becomes more on a CAC committee.
Yeah, to establish a criteria, a requirement that a person may have potential business impact seems really odd. This is a requirement, minimum criteria.
Yes.
Must meet the following criteria.
Yes, and like I have been reiterating, having these at-large positions, as I mentioned, not have direct technical work with air quality, but having them be a part of the committee, because one of the goals that we have this year for the committee is preparing and policy research on a potential non-attainment designation. So having these at-large positions be active in that discussion and being more prepared for what might be impacted for designation for the poor air quality. So that was my additional criteria to include them. So it's not just someone that has a technical background and assist in data gathering, but so they are a part of the committee for preparation of a non-attainment designation.
I have concerns about this changing from a technical committee to a CAC committee. But still being called a technical committee.
Okay, Sharon. We do have a motion and a second on the floor. I do have one question about the norms issue, and that is you use the word must for A and then the old B or the lower B, but the new B only says may. Does that mean that they may have that versus must?
Yeah.
This Andy, I was going to comment on that too, but I have a concern on that as well, because make that a absolute criteria, which is what must says, then that takes out most of the environmental groups. It's kind of contrary to what you're talking about. And then, of course, as pointed out by the chair, you then have may. So I'm not sure how that translates.
Sorry, I didn't hear a lot of that. Andy Pico was looking up on me. If someone could reiterate, I'd appreciate that, and then I can respond.
So Samantha, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is mostly around your addition of A and B. You say the members must meet the following criteria. A says must demonstrate, B says may have potential business impacts. And then the old B, which I assume is now C, must be able to attend committee meetings. So the B, the new Bravo says may. So are we trying to say that they may have that or they must have that? It's confusing. It seems contrary.
So I included may just because with a non-attainment designation, we won't be aware of what potential impacts and consequences that will come, because that goes into negotiation with the state and EPA once we receive non-attainment designation. So looking at Denver, who are a non-attainment for ozone, I know that for a fact they have transportation and business impacts. So that's why I included these at-large positions. But let's say in a few years down the line, we need to include either more at-large positions or have a separate group. That might change due to what consequences that we will understand at that point in time from the state and EPA with our non-attainment designation.
Okay, I see. I get it. Andy, did I miss some of what you said?
No, you got it. And listening to Samantha's explanation, I understand where she's going to, but I think inserting it at that particular place lends to confusion, because the intent of what she's saying is met by putting them on the having that broader membership ex officio on the committee. I don't think you need to put that as a criteria for selection of each member. And so I'd modify my motion to strike paragraph B, because I think it's redundant. Not that I disagree with it, but it's redundant.
Okay, I tend to agree. Who seconded that motion?
I believe I did.
Karen, you would have to agree to the amended motion.
Does anybody else want any more discussion before I do that? Norm?
No, you got to my point.
Let's get the motion and then have the discussion.
Okay, I agree.
Okay, now Norm, is there any more discussion on that or anything else?
No, you addressed the point. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other discussion for the broader conversation before we vote? So we are voting to approve this, but converting the new committee members to non-voting and omitting B from section 2. And with that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any nays? Okay, Samantha, you have a way forward.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Thank you for explaining that. I know it's difficult when we're all in different houses. Okay, that completes our action items, and we are moving on to our informational items. The first one is the COVID update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll kick this off briefly, then I'm going to turn this over to Jody. Thank you for the previous conversation. I know that was tedious, but it was necessary. We really need to get this group up and running. We've got a lot in front of us with the air quality work. On COVID-19, just real briefly, we're obviously following safe at home orders that were put out by the governor and following the county's guidance as well. Most of our staff are working remotely, but we're getting everything done. We're all accessible, all reachable, and have been really impressed with everybody's productivity. Most of our COVID-19 response and related work is really falling on the AAA. So I'm going to hand it off to Jody to just say a few words about some of the work that he's been doing in coordination with our service providers, in coordination with the state, and what our staff internally have been doing. So Jody, ready to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Madam Chair, for this moment. Just to bring you up to date, we have, as Andy mentioned, been continually outreaching to previous clients that we may have served, and so doing those calls of reassurance. So we have increased that area. In the bigger picture as it relates to the service providers that we contract with, during the month of mid-March, we did a program assessment, a needs assessment, and a needs assessment to determine with the emergency situation we were faced with what their immediate needs were and what their short to long-term needs were to continue meeting the needs of the community based on the changes that were happening. So we received very quickly from the state approximately $420,000 in emergency funding under the Family First Act. Those funds were immediately placed out to the community based on their needs and requests. And we have a few dollars left there, but we have met all or major portions of those requests under the emergency guidance that we were provided by the State Unit on Aging. In addition, there is another emergency fund expected. We have been notified of the CARES Act portion as it relates to senior service funding. That will equate to just over 1.36 million to come into Region 4, also to be used for emergency needs, increasing the need to work around social isolation, increasing connectivity, and also to increase the current service provision to allow seniors to stay safely at home. I heard a term used in a presentation the other day called harbor at home, and I like that. And so that is something that while there is some loosening, we know that for our aging population, the governor in particular has stated concerns. We know there are concerns from even our mayor, Southers, and our Dr. Robin Johnson, medical director with the El Paso County Medical Center. So we are being very realistic about what those services may need to look like long term, and being very careful about that. As I mentioned, we've been notified of that 1.36 million to come into Region 4. We have not received it yet. It will be a standalone contract because it will be over a 1-year period, therefore crossing our current contract and future contract period. We know that there are going to be significant state cuts in the budget, as has been mentioned before in other areas. However, what we do know is that the JBC met on Saturday to discuss state funding for senior services. While the outcome wasn't as bad as it could have been, these initial cuts are pretty significant to senior services. The bottom line from Saturday was that the JBC voted to transfer $13 million of unspent homestead funds that were to come into the Area Agency on Aging's and used for future services. They have transferred that $13 million back into the general fund as part of the makeup for CDHS. Now, that's the initial cut. There's still more to find out. There's still more conversation. The General Assembly has done a temporary suspension of the legislature until the week of May 25th. And so we don't know what more cuts may be coming our way. As you know, Colorado funding for state senior services has always exceeded our federal funds. And so this is of significant concern right now. So with that, with knowing that these cuts are coming, we are going to be proceeding cautiously with the new emergency funding. That emergency funding has been categorized in several different areas, but under the current emergency declaration for the state of Colorado, it gives us full flexibility in how we might use those funds. And so we're doing a lot of work to raise awareness around our services. I'm not on camera, but those of you who are familiar with the Yellow Book, those were received a week and a half ago and are out. We're starting to get those out in the community, either by our providers who can receive them and distribute them as best they can, even though many of those providers are closed. We are also actually driving them to our apartment complexes and providers by some of our staff as well. And we have received 2 newspaper boxes that are in front of the Chestnut Street doors at the street level, where anyone can pick those up at any time of day, along with our VA and Medicaid guidebooks. We have both of those products out. They were just printed and received in the last couple of weeks, and those are available to the public as well. So that's what I have for now. I am open for questions.
Thank you, Jody. Are there questions from the board?
This is Commissioner Stan. Some comments?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hey, I see on page 69, the 3rd major bullet, some of these activities from Melissa Martz. I just want to say that is fantastic. That you all reached out to 20, I'm going to read a little of this because not all of us can read the words. That you reached out to 26 apartment complexes for residents 55 and older soon after the stay-at-home order was in place. You provided direct referral support to the property managers, and you made deliveries of shelf-stable food items. Also working with volunteers and community partners, you delivered 1,300 activity bags to those complexes. That's fantastic. Thank you. So please thank Melissa. I don't know if she's on the line now, but if she's not, please send that thanks to her and everybody else that was involved in that as well, okay? And Andy, that's awesome.
Thank
Andy?
you so much. In fact, she's on the road. She stepped in for a phone call for me this morning with the states that I could be with you today. And she is on her way to Teller County here shortly to do some more outreach. She has just been gangbusters working on these projects. So she is also the primary one who's delivering our yellow books and a few more of those activity bags out to our region. So we are very grateful to have such a go-getter staff person. And as you know, her big push right around March when we were in the process of closing down was our census projects and census parties. And so while that changed significantly, that is still a focus. We're getting those brochures and flyers out through the meal programs, for example, to Teller County and El Paso County. And that's still in process. It just looks very different. So that's what we're in process of doing, is really visiting the services that we do, the services that our providers do, figuring out what we need to change, what might be short-term and what might be long-term. One of the concerns that we continue to hear from the state unit all the way down to our service recipients, as well as service providers, is how long we might expect these changes to last. And right now we're working on the assumption that it could be multiple months to several years based on what is the safest way to get back together. For example, with our congregate meal programs, this is very realistic. It's one of the largest programs that we administer. And we're on phone calls practically every day, multiple times a week, talking about possibilities, program changes. So there's just a lot going on every single day, and we certainly appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it is important also to recognize, and I think you all are doing this planning. It's difficult with coronavirus to know exactly where we're going to be 2 months and 6 months from now, but we should be thinking about and planning. I think you guys are doing it, but we should be thinking about and planning for the possibility that we're going to have coronavirus response activities that'll be necessary through the next winter cycle. So there are things that we've got to be thinking about to kind of get ourselves ready for that, just in case that does happen. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So true. And that's why we're looking at the next package of emergency funding usage very carefully, because not only backfilling potentially our state funding, but what that may need to look like during the winter time when the needs are greater to begin with. And then if we throw coronavirus on top of that, it just exacerbates the needs and the situation. So thank you for that support.
Great. Thank you, Jody. I appreciate your efforts, and Melissa is awesome.
Hey, Jody, this is Norm. Who is Melissa connecting with in Teller County? Do you know?
So I'm working mostly directly with Kathy and Ted. And so both of them have had expressed needs in a variety of areas. And fortunately, both of them have received additional funding for their services.
Okay. You might also connect with Jody Maharas at Community Partnership. She's doing a lot of the similar work. Melissa's may already be connected with her, but Community Partnership is in Divide. They're doing a lot of the meal delivery as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Great. Any other comments? On
Yeah, this is Jody. This is Sharon. Oh, there I am.
Yes. Hi.
Hey, I thank you so much for the hard work you guys are doing. It kind of really hurts my heart when I hear you talk about, months and I think somebody just said Christmas. And I have concerns about these people being isolated for that long. They need to get out in the community. There's a lot of these people that they go home in the afternoon and they don't talk to anybody until they come back to senior center in the morning. Mm-hmm. If we can help the conversations at all with smaller meeting places and finding smaller activities for them to do, I hope you'll reach out to us to see if there's anything we can do to help, because that's just a big concern for me on the social isolation and depression setting in, and especially if they don't have family in the area.
Thank you for that. That's just in line with some of the conversations that we have already been having over the last couple of weeks since the governor changed from the stay at home to safer at home and increased the groupings. And so some of the potential potential solutions or temporary solutions may be just what you've described, perhaps getting together in smaller groupings, but still providing that outreach and appropriate distancing and things like that. So there's a lot in the works and a lot yet to figure out, but it's what we do day in and day out. And so I appreciate hearing that, because it tells us we're on the same page and we're on the right track. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I even joke with someone that maybe we need to rent some large tents for the summer to have the people eat outside in grouped areas or something in the tent, with better air circulation. But we're gonna have to get creative.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Okay. We have one more informational item, but I see that Richard Zamora has to leave at 11. That's 5 minutes. I don't know if he's still on the call, but if he is, I'd like to skip forward to the CDOT report and let him report out.
Yeah, I still am on the call, and Shane and I are going to tag team a little bit on the CDOT update, but I just wanted to give folks kind of a little more information, based upon the conversation with Shoshana.
Right.
As she indicated, we've got some pretty significant struggles when it comes to Senate Bill 267. Years 3 and 4 are very, very much questionable. And, year 2 is going to be reprioritized in terms of how much is available in each region based upon some other commitments around the state. And so, Commissioner Halter, I know he's on the call and he may want to address that, but basically we're trying to do some scenario planning right now. And based upon the scenarios that have been given to the Transportation Commission for their decision making, Region 2 stands to be looking at anywhere between $10.7 million and $30.6 million of additional year 2 Senate Bill 267. And as I indicated, that's all dependent upon how the TC decides to allocate the funding. But in any scenario that they're looking at, they're looking to hold like the MAMSET project, which I know is important to this area, and other projects that have been awarded and have other commitments to them in out years. They're looking to hold those projects harmless. And so, that's the assumption based upon that. So this would be an additional $10.7 million to $30.6 million they have to allocate amongst the regional projects and the priorities. We're doing some scenario planning around that right now, and there's a lot of different parts and pieces that, we're trying to take into account, geographic equity throughout Region 2, looking at, priorities of the projects on the various PPRs and planning areas. And so we're coming up with various scenarios on how to use that funding right now. I'm going to be talking with John a little bit later this afternoon, kind of walking through some of those potential scenarios that we're going to be discussing with Sean tomorrow afternoon. And so that's really all I have. Shane has all the project updates that he'll be able to go through the group. But before I have to jump off, do you have any questions for me?
Great. Thank you, Richard. Any questions? Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time. And Shane, do you have some more updates?
Yeah, sure. We can go through the CDOT updates now if you'd like. I wanted to update on the US 24 projects. We've got 2 of them that are currently underway now to the west. The surface treatment job that's from 8th Street to Manitou. We should be finishing up the bridge work this week. Next week, we should be wrapping up the asphalt surface treatment at 21st Street, and final week following that would be the final striping for the project. A few punch list items beyond that for erosion control. But that piece of the project, again, that's from 8th Street to Manitou, should be wrapped up within the next 3 weeks. We are beginning the second phase, or the next phase, as it was indicated earlier, that we're working from Manitou up to Cascade for another surface treatment project. And that will be this summer. That should begin some of the flat work up by the Pikes Peak intersection probably next week, and surface treatment for that project, which will be a night job, will begin in earnest here towards the end of May, early June. A few more projects to discuss. We will be beginning the next phase of the cable barrier project, which is on I-25 south of Fountain, about 6 miles worth of additional cable barrier. That's beyond the military access project that we'll be doing later in the summer. The ramp metering project that's going on right now in Colorado Springs is looking to wrap up at least a portion of it this June. We're still working on the fiber backbone, if you will, through Colorado Springs. Once we got into the project, the fiber line was pretty well in need of repair, and so that was just some additional work that we needed to address. Couple of additional projects out east. The passing lanes on 24 near Peyton is underway, as well as the 94 and Peyton intersection is under construction. The MAMSIPs, or the Military Access Project, we hope to see some work on I-25 between 135 and 128 to do some surface treatment, just some temporary surface treatment work this summer. Hope to see that underway this June. It's really a sacrificial topping, if you will, just to get through the summer and fall. The primary work of that project on I-25, we're looking to begin probably in the fall. On 94, the passing lanes, we're looking to, my goal is to see some work in ground disturbed probably late July, early August on that piece of the project. Similar timeline for Charter Oaks. We're working with El Paso County currently with an IGA. Once we get the IGA in place, we'll be able to start maneuvering with our funding and get that project hopefully underway as well this summer. And so with that, that is primary construction projects for CDOT at this time. Update. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions?
I was getting, oh gosh, like weekly updates to do with the cabling projects so that I could pass them along to a citizens group, Citizens for Safer I-25, and I stopped getting those a couple 3 months ago. Could I start getting those again?
Absolutely. I'll find out what was going on. Do you know who you're receiving them from?
I can go back through my emails. It was like a weekly report that was going out of what's going to be going on, you know.
Okay, so that may be one of our weekly reports that we send out when a project is under construction.
Okay.
And so that piece of the construction was completed. This next phase, we're looking at, like I said, probably here, the next, I'd say in June, that next phase will begin, and you'll probably start to receive construction updates on that piece of the project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shane. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to skip back to informational items. Our second informational item is the 5310 Mobility Coordination Update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll take this one, and I'll be really brief. I wanted to give a chance to check back in with the board. I want to give an update about every couple of months as far as what we're doing around mobility coordination. And if you'll recall, this gets to specialized transportation service that we provide. We provide some support through our agency, through the AAA, then some support is provided by the city through MMT. And specialized transportation is really for senior mobility and also persons with disabilities that can't access our transit system. But given that two major agencies have provided support to these service providers throughout the region, there's been interest in getting this consolidated under one umbrella, and that being under PPACG. So it's required a lot of coordination, a lot of discussions with the city, with MMT, with FTA, because they have oversight responsibility as well, with our service providers and a bunch of other folks to coordinate with. But I think we're making pretty good progress, and we're close to, I think, pretty close to executing a letter of agreement or a letter of intent, if you will, with the city, still working out the final details on that, but that also has a financial plan attached to it as well. MMT is currently the designated recipient of the federal transit monies that flow to the region for this service. It's called the 5310 program. So the reason we're getting into this is that we need to see about shifting that designated recipient status over to PPACG. So we want to make sure that we have everything in place to be able to move forward with that. But as we've been having these discussions, we've also recently, over the past couple of weeks, in parallel, have had interviews with the mobility coordinator candidates that have applied for this position. We really need somebody that can, follow this through and help us with the transitional stuff that's happening this year, but then also oversee and coordinate the program going forward. So we had a really outstanding pool of candidates that we were able to pull from and hold interviews with just recently. And I'm hoping as we finalize our letter of intent with the city, hopefully within a matter of days, then we can hopefully zoom in on a specific candidate and make an offer and get somebody on board this summer. Our hope is that, assuming everything comes together with the financial plan and letter of intent, that we can make this transition happen where it all is under PPACG's umbrella by the end of this year. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. Feel really good about the coordination that's happening with the service providers in the region, with Envita, Silver Key, and Fountain Valley Senior Center especially. They're doing some fantastic work as far as coordinating with their data that they collect, and that's going to help us as far as coordinating service going forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Keep the board regularly updated as we're making progress. Consistent with our strategic plan as well, I was reminded of that recently, that we called out getting more involved in mobility coordination, and this is really a tangible way to do that as well. So feeling pretty good about the ability to move forward with our transition this year.
That's great. I'm really impressed on how you guys are moving forward so well, and I know that partnership is complicated, and I'm grateful you guys are getting that done. Any other questions from the board?
Hi, Jill,
Yep.
Madam Chair. I just want to, I'm so grateful, the enormous amount of work that's gone into this, and this is the appropriate place for it, under the umbrella of PPACG, and I'm really I'm counting on the 5310 funds going under the PPACG umbrella. And why it's important is that it's more of a regional transportation system for the elderly and people with disabilities. I use them all, but Metro Mobility is so limited and where you can go. Like, for instance, we're still not able to go to the Northeast hospitals and different areas, where with these other mobility services, we are able to go. So I really appreciate that this is where it's happening. And I'm real thankful to the tremendous job that PPAC has done under your leadership, Andy Gunning. So that's my comment.
That's a great comment, Yolanda. Thank you so much for speaking up.
Yeah, I agree with Yolanda and Andy. Thank you for all your hard work you've done on this. I look forward to meeting our new mobility coordinator.
Very good.
We'll get something on board soon. And thank you for that. We've got an awesome team that's working on this internally between John Leosados, Jody Barker. It's going to reside within the AAA, so Jody's been involved. Casey Partridge as well, and Mark Northrup, one of our transportation planners. But there's only so much we can do, and it's finally time to get a coordinator on board. So hopefully we'll be
a lot of moving pieces, and you got to make sure they all fit in the puzzle.
Right. Amen. Okay, thank you. Okay, we are on to our reports. The first one is military installations. I don't know if any of those folks are on the line. If
Madam Chairman, Craig Biondo here from Peterson.
Hello, Craig.
It's regrettable that I report to you today that the 21st States Commander Colonel Toronto died unexpectedly at his home on base yesterday afternoon, May 12th. Death is still under investigation, but initial indications are that it was due to natural causes. So Colonel Sam Johnson, who typically represents the wing at this board, is currently the wing commander of the 21st Space Wing. So out of respect for the Falterano family, and we're asking the public and media to respect their privacy during this time.
Craig, this is Commissioner Stan. My apologies. You broke up a little bit. I certainly heard some terrible news, but I didn't hear who it was.
Colonel Tom Falterano, the wing commander.
Oh my God.
Space Wing commander.
Yeah. Okay.
At his home on base.
Oh wow.
I'm sorry, I'm still not getting the name.
Tom Falterano, Colonel Tom Falterano.
Oh.
Wing Commander, we're so sorry, Craig. And we will respect the privacy of the family. Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Our condolences, and I've met him, and that's just terrible.
I will. I'll be passing. on some more normal business for updates from the Peterson Air Force Base today. We're starting to see a little bit more activity on the installation as a few more people are coming back to work as normal with, of course, social distancing protocols in place. We continue to add slowly a few additional services to personnel. So our military and civilian personnel offices are still continuing to provide most of their services virtually, but are providing ID card services and onboarding for new civilian employees. So that's going well. We've also expanded our childcare capability for mission essential children they've transitioned back to their normal facility. We had concentrated those guys down to one facility, and it was very limited capability that we were able to provide, but now we were able to expand back into normal facilities and keeping care in the rooms with no more than 10 occupants at a time, in accordance with the Colorado Child Care guidelines and public health guidance. At least something fun. We're offering golf for our junior enlisted E1 through E5 on base. So, but it's we've got our golf course open for reservations. So feel free to, if you like golf, and feel free to come to the installation. And they also work by reservation only, so you'll have to call ahead. No walk-ons. The gate entry procedures with closed windows. I don't know if I spoke about this at the last PPACG, but basically when you approach Peterson Air Force Base, windows are in the up position. You show your ID with picture, and for those with an official ID card, you can flip that around and you will be scanned for ID validation in the DBID system. And our VCC, our visitor control centers, both at Peterson and Cheyenne Mountain, remain open Monday through Friday from 8 to 2. A couple of other updates in our PFOA arena. We continue to test through the month of May. And we're continuing our quarterly monitoring of on and off base wells with no issues in any of those monitoring processes. We do have some new construction scheduled for award. So we're going to be hosting a just over 12,000 square foot facility for the Colorado Air National Guard. It's space control facility, and we're expecting that award before the 30th of September. For Special Operations Command North, their theater operational support facility is about 90,200 square feet. Also expecting award by the 30th of September. And one that's a little ways off, the Colorado Army National Guard Readiness Center. It's a 35,000 square foot facility. We're expecting award by 2022 on that project. Other than that, that's all I have from Peterson Air Force Base, pending any questions.
Sorry, I just realized I was muted. So thank you, Craig. Are there any questions for Craig before we move on? Okay, I think the next agenda item is the TAC.
Madam Chair, this is Ron Jeffrey from Schriever Air Force Base.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. The rest of the military installations, of course.
That's all right. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to make a few comments. I'll keep it brief here. Schriever is in the recovery phase of our response to COVID-19. Beginning on 4 May, Schriever leaders began bringing work centers back online with up to 50% of the workforce in the office at any time during the work week. We're also continuing to emphasize the use of telework, in particular for those folks who are high risk or live with high risk individuals. We encourage them to maintain 100% telework until we get further along the road to dealing with COVID. As mentioned, part of the reason we're bringing the workforce back is to strengthen those connections and interactions and make sure that our folks aren't out there isolated, especially some of the younger folks who may not have such strong connections outside of work. So I think that's progressing well. One item to note here is on the 1st of May. That date marked the start of the open period for Air Force members to volunteer to join the U.S. Space Force, the 6th branch of the Armed Forces. That window closes on May 31st, and we're looking forward to a lot of folks joining the ranks of the U.S. Space Force. The final item that I'll mention is the Global Positioning System, better known as GPS, marked its 25th year of operation on April 27th. On this date in 1995, the system reached full operational capability and started delivering those important services. Perhaps back in 1995, they didn't realize the global impact that it was going to have, touching all of our lives in a direct way. But certainly we depend on it now, and we continue to operate it here at Shreve Air Force Base. And with that, I'll stop and pause for any questions.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I won't move on. Anybody from the Air Force Academy? Fort Carson? Okay, I think I'm safe to move past military installations onto the TAC.
Madam Chair, we were actually going to skip over reports from the 4 committees.
Okay.
Minutes, the board members all have the minutes of their most recent meetings in the packet, but in the interest of time, we were going to.
Okay, I see that. I see that on the agenda now. I'm starting to get punchy, obviously, at the end of this meeting. Okay, it does appear you would like to talk about staff, though, and then the executive director report.
Well, real briefly in STAC, the report that we received from STAC was largely what Shoshana Liu presented in her presentation. So,
okay.
Pretty lengthy discussion. We had a lot more detail, but I'll just probably leave it at that rather than go into that again.
Okay, fair enough. And Andy, would you like to give your report?
And I really don't have anything specific. I was going to cede my time just real briefly to our co-chairs of the legislative committee if they wanted to give a really brief update. We got our legislative committee ramped up again, met this past Monday in anticipation of the General Assembly coming back May 26th. So if the 2 commissioners are still on the line, if they want to give a real brief update, that would be fine.
Sounds good.
They may have had to check out. But a good
Stan?
call. Yeah.
Yes, this is Stan. I'm sorry, I missed that. Andy, what did you say?
Oh, I was ceding my time if we wanted to give a super brief update on legislative committee discussion from this past Monday. Good conversation with our lobbyist, with Lauren, listing off the bill that we were tracking. But with the understanding that it's going to be a really truncated session for about 2.5 weeks, I think is what we heard from Lauren, and bills that have a fiscal note are going to be dead on arrival most likely. But Commissioner, do you want to, anything else you wanted to emphasize from Monday's meeting?
Yes, thank you. We did hold our first legislative committee meeting since the close down on Monday. This is the PPACG committee meeting. And we did speak with Lauren, who's up in Denver. Most of the bills that we were supporting, but really it applies to almost every bill that has been proposed this legislative session that has a fiscal note connected to it. Essentially, all of them are going to be canceled or tabled. Almost none of those are going to be able to make it through. And it has to do with the fact that the state has a $3 billion plus shortfall that they've got to try to figure out. Many of you may know the JBC, Joint Budget Committee, has been working on that issue. They have proposed a lot of pretty serious cuts, and they are not at $3 billion already. So the legislative session is going to have to do quite a lot of work working with the JBC when they go into session to try to figure out where to get those, because we do have a statutory requirement in Colorado for a balanced budget. They talked extensively about some of those cuts. It'll be hundreds of millions of dollars in Medicaid, hundreds of millions of dollars in HICPUF, tens of millions in the DHS, tens of millions in OIT, big numbers. These are going to be important things for us to pay attention to in PPACG, because there may be activities we're going to have to start thinking about trying to do to cover in fiscally difficult times, because the state won't be able to cover them. And hopefully those things will not last a really long time. So there are a couple of bills that we are going to need to continue to pay some attention to, and we're going to continue to look at a few of those. There may be some recommendations coming from the legislative committee to the broader board based on what we find as we go through that. I think that's about all I want to report on at this point. It's going to be a very, very difficult legislative session trying to get through it. And their number one priority is getting to a budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Dick Elsner. I'd like to add a couple of things.
Please.
One of the items that they're really looking at is removing the senior exemption on property taxes, which I think we need to keep pushing back on. A lot of seniors rely on that to be able to make ends meet. So, that's going to be a problem. And then the one that came up was the bill for the PFAS, or, all of that good stuff, where they were, it's not a bill yet, it's under discussion, but they wanted to add a fee to liquefied natural gas to pay for the cleanup, which, our discussion was, it makes no sense to tax one thing that has absolutely no relation to what the problem is. If that comes up, it's going to have a pretty severe impact, especially on the more rural areas, because propane would be one of the items that would be taxed. So you'd have rural Colorado paying for issues on the cleanup that they had nothing to do with. Other than that, yeah, looking at it, they postponed starting the session for a week over what they originally had announced, because they can't get enough cuts done. So they're not starting until, I don't know, the
26th May.
Yeah, so they're not starting till the 26th. There's talk about a short session to try to come up with, okay, here's the basic budget, but then possibly having a couple of sessions, or at least one session later on, to address issues as they come up. That's all I have.
This is Sharon. I'm hoping the legislative committee is going to meet Monday. I actually have 2 amendments I would like to offer to that PFAS bill that's being written. We may do one as Fountain, we may do one as a PPACG. We'll see where they go. But we need to be extraordinarily nimble and responsive to what goes on. Things are going to be moving fast and furious. So when Jessica sends out an email, we really need people to take time and read that quickly and get any response back, so that we can be getting our positions up to the legislature as soon as possible.
And Sharon, thank you for that. My apologies, Jill, if you were planning on speaking. Just with that in mind, right? If there's only going to be 2 to 2.5 weeks of legislative session, you may recall what we did last year when we got towards the end of the legislative session. We went to really fast response mechanisms in PPACG so that we can have broader board votes on recommendations. I'd say we're going to need to do that during these 2 to 2.5 weeks. So we should probably get prepared for that.
Yeah, things are going to
just remember, no response. We assume you are agreeing with the position that comes out to you.
Got it.
This Andy, I want to add a little bit. Did a little bit of digging on that PFAS bill. Ran the draft by our utilities. They're not too concerned with it, but one of the things that is very concerning is that in that bill, they listed, liquefied petroleum is what they're going after, and then they listed all the places that they would assess the fee against, and gas stations was one of them as well. So it is essentially a fee on gas that we all fill up on, or most of us, and so it's going to be a pretty significant impact if this thing gets legs. So with the comment already made that we're going to have to be pretty nimble and quickly responsive in this thing. If this thing comes forward, it's going to take some action because it will hurt everybody.
Okay, good points, Andy. Okay, that concludes the agenda for today's meeting. Is there anything else before we adjourn?
This is Commissioner Stan, just a couple of quick notes from the county.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The first one, I just wanted everybody to be aware, Holly Williams's father passed away late last week. And if you have an opportunity to express your condolences, I would appreciate it. And so she is in Utah right now and dialing into our board meetings and so forth remotely. But we did have a family member of one of our board members pass away. And then one other quick thing, the board and public health and the hospitals continue to work on variances. Many of you may have already heard this, but we are likely to see tomorrow in our board meeting a variance request for the commission to vote on regarding restaurants. And there's also a possibility for campgrounds. So we might see 2 variances or some modified version of that coming through this week. So that's all I have for the county. Thank you.
Well, I think we look forward to seeing that, Stan. So thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
Any other updates?
Update from Teller.
Okay.
Teller County submitted a countywide variance application request last Friday, May 8th. It basically included restaurants, all aspects that are currently closed down, with the provision that those restaurants maintain social distancing and other precautions. Based on the evidence, our case count is very low. Our responsibility to any increased cases is very high. So that's in, you may note also Fremont County submitted theirs also last week on May 6th. So that now brings the total to 2 counties approved and 9 additional counties in the queue waiting approval, including Teller.
Wow.
One other, and by the way, I did forward that to Andy Gunning and forward a copy to Stan Vanderwerf and Andy Fico. If you'd like to read that, it's 55 pages in length, and you can read it from the Teller County website. We started with about 6 pages. The 3 commissioners personally wrote that and staffed it among agencies in the region. So that's available on the Teller County website, main page, top of page. Second thing is Interstate Park in Teller County opened yesterday with the exception of group campgrounds and cabins. So
fabulous.
That's now open. Come up and recreate. Be careful with comes with being still in place, but we're ready to go, I think.
Okay, but I can't bring my dog to Mueller.
And sorry, Jill, as a follow-up to Norm's comment, Cheyenne Mountain State Park also opened today
Nice.
for camping. They have a whole bunch of protocols, and you do need to make reservations, but they are open.
Fabulous. We need to get out. Any other updates? Okay, well, I thank everyone for being here today. It was a good meeting. Andy, thank you for your preparations and your staff. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Take care.
So long.
So long.